So, hi everybody, this is my first shot using my new computer and trying to make a video off of it. So we're going to make a real short video today, hopefully, and it's just going to be global trade prior to 1500. Now, I've put a couple of videos, crash course videos on the playlist. I would like you to watch those, but what I'm going to give you right now are the major nuts and bolts. What we're going to be talking about today is simply put, as you can read on the screen, you guys and we are going to talk about what is happening in the world prior to 1500. Not going to take real long. It's fairly easy, fairly straightforward, but we're going to find some major states and empires. We're going to look at major trade patterns and break them down and figure out why they existed, what was going on. And we're going to look at the major scientific exchanges in the Eastern Hemisphere. So prior to 1800, really trade patterns were broken down into what we'll call regional trading patterns. Okay, regional trading patterns simply mean parts of the world traded with each other. So if you think back to your world geography classes, you've got Europe as a region, Central Asia as a region, the Middle East, as we often call it, Southwest Asia and North Africa is a region, Asia, Eastern, South Asia, Southeast Asia, they're all regions. And they trade with each other. But what they also do is they also begin trading outside of themselves. And so you have what begins to emerge as trade links between those regions, and you have some inter-regional trading. And the reason that they are important is because those regional trading patterns promote the exchange of stuff, things, and ideas. And those things and ideas are really what make life worth living. So let's talk about some of the specific things that traveled along the different trade routes. So what were some things that traveled along? Well, from China, we get a lot of different stuff. The Europeans are who we're kind of focusing on here, and what did they, or rather, how did they benefit from life or from things? And so let's talk about what we got from China. Europeans from China, they got paper. Chinese people exported paper, the knowledge to make paper. The compass was an idea, was a technological innovation that came from China as well. Silk. Silk and porcelain were the most desired products that came out of China. And tea also was desired out of China to a little bit lesser extent. But it did play a pretty major role in culture eventually in Great Britain. But those are the products that came out of China. Out of India and or the Indian subcontinent, what becomes India, textiles, cloth. This pattern right here, this paisley pattern, is a pattern that comes from India, and is specifically from the Indian subcontinent. Spices, saffron, cinnamon, things that made our food taste good, all come from India. And those began to be traded along different trade routes that we'll look at in a little bit more detail later. The Middle East held a lot of mostly ideas for us that we really benefited, and by we, I simply mean Europeans. So Europeans really benefited out of these things. Okay, number system. Our numbering system that we use today, right now, is an Arabic number system. Our numbers look very similar to the numbers that the ancient Arabs used, or not ancient, but Arabs used in the 1500s and prior to that. Astronomy. The Arabs were fantastic astronomers. Muslims were the dominant religion of the region at the time, and they held on to a lot of advancements that the Greeks and the Romans had had, while the West, as you guys have read and as we've watched videos, why the West or Europe really fell back into really backwards and stupid and almost dumb times. But anyway, the Middle East held on, and we get our numbering system from them. Our use of astronomy, mathematics, medicine really comes from the Middle East, because they kept a lot of the ancient learning of the Greeks and advanced it as well. So use your computer. Here's what I want you guys to do. On your maps, you guys are going to draw different trade routes, and we're going to figure those out. We're going to talk about those later in class, but I want you to make sure that you mark those on your maps as well. So after 1500, what were the trading routes like? Well, what we see emerge after 1500 were goods that expanded trade. Okay, so, or I'm sorry, not goods that expanded trade, but routes that expanded and more greatly connected regions together. And one of those is something called the Silk Road. Now, the Silk Road had existed for hundreds of years prior to 1500, but the Silk Road and the exchange of products from China was really beneficial. So what was traded on there? Again, The Silk Road was a route, a trade route that, as John Green said in another video, that was neither silk nor a road, but it was a trade network that connected the Eastern Mediterranean, or Europe, another way of putting it, to China. And again, if it's coming from China, you get paper, silk, compass, and porcelain. Well, tea also emerges later as a beneficial thing traded along there. Now, what about the trans-Saharan routes? Trans-Saharan routes simply means routes that are traded across the Sahara Desert. And the primary good or things that passed through there were gold and salt. In fact, the richest man in the world is a guy named Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa controlled more gold than any other human being that ever has, and he had more wealth than anyone. He took a pilgrimage, because he was Muslim, to Mecca, and as he moved along his trade route, moved along the trans-Saharan trade routes, he dropped his wealth all along the way, spent a lot of money, and Egypt saw a resurgence. Even Mecca saw a resurgence and grew to flourish. Well, obviously, if we're in the year around 1500, we don't have refrigeration. Salt also was very vitally important to global trade because it made your food last just a little bit longer. After 1500, trans-Saharan trade routes, see, gold and salt are still traded, but to a lesser extent. And later on, raw materials and men, as we'll see when we explore the age of exploration. Again, obviously, the trade in men meaning slavery. Okay, so what are some of the things that were traded along the South China Sea? South China Sea is obviously Southeast Asia and Southern China. So cinnamon, pepper, coffee, my personal favorite right over here. I love coffee, as you guys all know, but it's traded from South Asia. I'm sorry, along the South China Sea routes. And the Indian Ocean routes, the routes that cross the Indian Ocean, saw saffron and cinnamon, other spices. Now, these are all things, let me go back. These are all things that were traded along those routes and things that Europeans desired and things that people all along the way desired. And so as that trade increased, more money and more wealth was gained. And we're going to talk about some of the issues with controlling those trade routes in the next unit. Well, European routes, the European routes, as we're going to see, as you guys saw on the map worksheet, were connected, and they basically took the products and ideas from Asia and traded them amongst themselves. European trade routes connected Italy or Venice to the rest of Europe, and they were obviously, for the most part, overland routes. There were some that went through the Mediterranean, out of the Straits of Gibraltar, into Europe, but for the most part, those were overland routes, and we have explored those just a little bit, or will explore those just a little bit as we go on into this unit. All right, thanks guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys tomorrow.